Josh Costella. Thanks for being here. You've worked a lot in the Atlassian ecosystem, C Prime, Atlassian, Percipio, Exalt, a lot of experience in the Atlassian space. My first question is, what is the difference between working with a huge organization like C Prime or maybe even Atlassian versus working with Exalt on like maybe a more customer oriented level?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it comes down to just the team that you're working with. I think at the end of the day, I don't think that for me, in my experience, the company size doesn't matter to me anyway. Like it may matter to some people, but I think it's if you can find yourself in the right team, then it could be a million people. It doesn't really matter as long as you're on the same page with the right team and you guys are productive and you guys are just like killing it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, sure, there's definitely cultural differences. Like there are, once you get to a company of a certain size, things become a lot more political, bureaucratic, however you want to label
Right.
it. There's a lot more layers of leadership. There's a lot more, you know, moving parts, right? It's a big behemoth. It's like trying to steer you know, a cargo ship, right? It's going to take a while. So I mean, there's an opportunity to move faster when you're a smaller company and things like that. That can also be a detriment because sometimes people hold on to that a little too long, hold on to that mindset, where eventually you do need some structure, like you need a processor here or there to actually function as a real company. And I think the challenge comes in between. I don't think that necessarily the challenge is when you're a small company and a startup and you're just getting going. And I don't think the challenge is necessarily when you're a big company and you're established. It's the growing phase, the growing
Right.
pains. That's where the most important decisions are going to be made. And that will determine, in my opinion, the success or failure of your company. It's laying that foundation and getting the right people in the right places and the right processes in places and sticking to that. That makes the most difference. I don't know
Makes
if that answers
sense.
the question.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I'm actually curious from, let's say you were a customer looking to bring in an Atlassian implementation team.
Mhm.
Based on your background, what would you go with, a large company or a smaller company?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um,
Or does it not even matter from your perspective, from what you've seen so far?
I mean, as long as they're legit, like for what you can figure out and research, and hopefully you can get some kind of unbiased third party that can help advise you of like, maybe the main differences between these two companies. I mean, look, each company's going to sell you to death, right? They're going to promise the world, they're going to do this and that. But I mean, there's definitely ways that you can verify that they are kind of who they say they are. I think Atlassian does a good job of having the partner directory where it says right there, like how many certifications they have, what are their accreditations, like what partner status are they. That's a pretty good measure of the kind of the quality and the experience that you have there. And then I think I would also try to maybe talk to an existing customer. If there are any customers that they list on their website, use cases and whatnot, get reach out to them and say how was your experience? Like we see the marketing bit, but like how was it? Like what was the project like? How was the execution? Those types of things. Because to me, like these usually end up being very big contracts, right? A lot of the time, like you're talking six figures usually, the bigger ones, at least sometimes 7, 8 figures I've seen.
Hmm.
So it's important to get it right. I don't think the size of the company should deter you either way. I think there's a lot of great small partners out there that are doing really good work and kind of changing the game a little bit. You guys included. uh, and I think it's good. I think the consulting industry is due for disruption. And I think you're
I
already going
agree.
to have a lot of that just with AI. But consulting needs to evolve. It needs to evolve. And the whole kind of time that I've been the consultant, which is probably over half my career at this point,
Mm-hmm.
I I never liked the idea of being a consultant. I hate consultancy. Like I because like where I come from is like I want to be able to enable people to do it themselves. I want to basically work myself out of a job. That's always the way I approached every engagement with a customer was I want to make you guys good enough that you can do this yourselves
Mm-hmm.
when we leave. Because to me that is the sign of a good engagement is that that's a sign of a good engagement. I see the problem that I see, and I'm sorry I'm rambling, but the problem that I see a lot of, and a lot of times it's with the bigger firms, right? Your Accentures, your
Right.
Deloitte's, those kinds of people, is that they're not necessarily in the business of enablement. They're in the business of making themselves so valuable to your company that you can't imagine them going away.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. I understand why, but I'm just the opposite. Like I want to get this engagement done. I want to get you guys everything that you need, and I respectfully don't ever want to see you again because you guys don't need us anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of but that's the way I've approached every engagement ever, and I'm admitting that publicly now, but like I've told people that like directly. Um, but because it's just I just feel like the industry needs to change. And I feel
Yep.
like especially in the Atlassian realm, right? There's so many customers, dude. Like
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of thousands of customers, right?
Yeah, like
There's
500,000 or
always
something,
another
or
customer
300.
out there. Yeah, there's always another customer out there that can be helped. You don't need to lock in to every single customer and be like, hey, let's have a 10-year engagement. Let's have a 10-year relationship, and it's just as an income source for us. And it's just like it's not my game.
Right. Yeah, that's a great perspective to have. I think a lot of end users or teams crave that. They don't want to
Yeah.
be locked in. They don't want to be fixed to your team, your company. That perspective is probably so refreshing for a lot of people listening to this. The kind of the comparison between large and small organization, and I don't think this applies to all of them,
Mhm.
but on a number of occasions I've had to go in and like clean up the stuff that a big organization has done
Dude, yes.
for for a few reasons, but a lot
Yeah.
of times it's just because of scope creep and
Hmm.
speed of the engagement. As you mentioned, like bigger companies, big cargo ship takes a long time to steer, engagements take a while. I can jump in and do something myself if I have to, and oftentimes I do.
Right.
I could do, in some cases it was like this company's been working on this for 4 months. I jumped in and was able to implement something that they did in four within 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's just that agility of a small company doesn't translate all the time to larger companies. And that's probably one benefit. And again, I'm sure there's really great companies that are out there that provide great services very quickly. But these are like a few big name partners that I was like, oof, like I didn't
Mm.
know they were like that. And people
There
make
is
mistakes. So I'm
yeah,
sure it's not like it happens all the time, but
sure.
I'm sure most partners are great.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely, I mean, of course, like in any industry, right? There's your absolute champions, and then there's those that need to get better. And
Hmm.
yeah, there's definitely I've had a few of those experiences over the years where I won't ever say names, but like where we've come in and had to do a little bit of a cleanup and see what another partner had done, and it's just like whoa, like this is unacceptable. But luckily, it hasn't happened very often.
Hmm.
Um, but when it has happened, it's been like, what, just what? But
Yeah,
yeah, no,
hopefully those are
for the
one-off.
most part, and being an advantage of being in this community in this industry for this long, like I know a lot of people at most of the partners, most of the major partners, and even a lot of the small partners, and I would trust the vast majority of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I,
So
I would agree for the most part too.
yeah,
I've worked with a few partners in the past as well, and they were more mid-sized. They weren't huge organizations, but it was a great experience with them.
yeah.
Speaking of like larger versus smaller companies, what do you see that smaller companies tend to do differently from like enterprise organizations when it comes to implementing Jira?
Well, I mean, to me, the simplest correct answer is like paying any attention to the back end, to the
Mm-hmm.
administration, to the configuration, to the implementation itself. Um, Mostly because a lot of the smaller companies don't have the funds to do that, or the time, or the ability. They don't have people on staff that know the tools.
Yep.
Your enterprise companies usually are kind of forced into that just because of the sheer scale. Like, we've got to have somebody doing this, otherwise, it's going to fall apart. And usually, in my experience, when you have a giant company that is using Atlassian, they've obviously had some interaction with Atlassian, so
Mm-hmm.
they've they've more than likely got that recommendation from them, or what have you, like, or at least they know enough to have someone in that position. And I think, yeah, it is it's just having that lack of people on staff that know the product well enough to own it. Like, to me,
Mm-hmm.
Jira needs a product owner, like, or more like a technical product owner or program manager, whatever you would want to call it. Really, they need a solution architect at the end of the day, not an
So what,
admin.
yeah.
That's my soapbox thing. I've talked about it before in other podcasts, but like, everybody needs a solution architect in the Atlassian space.
Mhm. What do you do if you're a smaller company, you can't afford that? What options do you have?
Well, I mean, I think you look to your, obviously, your more technical teams, your IT teams, your help desk style people, um, and you ask. I mean, you quite simply ask, say, hey, does anybody want to learn something new? Does anybody want to support something? Does anybody want to, like, you have to just kind of gauge the interest first, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, like, when I started, there wasn't as much material as there is now in terms of learning how to do the
Yeah.
job. So I think the bar of entry is lower, and that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you just kind of have to find those people. And I think every company has those people. They have those people
Mm-hmm.
that have that kind of architect mindset, that they like building stuff. They like creating solutions. They like workflows. They like understanding business processes. They like data. They have like a little bit of an interest in all those things that touch what the Atlassian stack does. And yeah, it's just finding that right person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great perspective, and I think a lot of companies tend to do that. I think they just need to make sure there's enough resources going allocated towards like, hey, dedicate this amount of time to
Mm-hmm.
learning everything you can about Atlassian and Jira, especially if you're using Jira as like your home base for pretty much everything.
Yep.
My only fear around that is, and it's going to happen to every company everywhere and every software, to be honest, but the whole assigning someone a tool or like a role of being a Jira admin, you just don't know what you don't know yet. And
Mm-hmm.
there's only things that you'll kind of figure out at year 2, year 3. I look back and like there's stuff that I learned today that I wish I would have known earlier and that I probably should have known earlier. And it's just stuff that you kind of learn with experience and over time. So I think the only thing to watch out for is like if you have a lot of critical business processes, a lot of project management, a lot of IT support, customer support done in Jira, just
Mm-hmm.
make sure it's like set up with best practices. Maybe like
Yeah.
hire consultants for a few hours just to jump in and check, just to
Yeah.
verify everything's looking good, or even train your help desk team for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That way they're aware and kind of have that shortcut of seeing someone who's done it for 10 plus years. That's
Yeah.
my only fear with like those companies that kind of want to implement it themselves. I know it's like the only option for a lot of those different organizations, but I always recommend having some kind of an expert involved somewhere along the way.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. Yeah, yeah, and I think there's a lot. I think in a lot of partners now too, they offer like managed services where it's kind of like
Mhm.
an on-demand kind of admin service
Yeah.
where you don't necessarily have to agree to a huge six-figure deal. You can kind of do a monthly, kind of almost subscription-based, couple hours a month. We just need your help. We need your guidance, kind of thing. I'm a big
Mhm.
fan of that kind of service model. Like, especially in this industry, because I think that can be kind of that release valve for the for the smaller companies that maybe don't have the resources to hire somebody at 100,000 a year, but they could afford maybe 50,000 a year in support, and get that training, get that knowledge transfer, get that experience, and ask those questions, and then maybe after a year they'd be like, all right, we're going to try it ourselves, and then yeah, go from there.
Yeah, that's a great perspective as well. I think partners, yeah, as you mentioned, oftentimes are open to that kind of a model, especially the smaller partners. The big partners might have their own locked in work implementations that they do, but smaller partners are usually a lot more flexible.
Yeah.
What is one thing that you think Atlassian revolutionized for the better?
I mean, I think personally, I would say probably JSM at this point. I'm a big JSM guy. Like I love Jira Service Management. Like I was using it when it was not called that, and it was even back then, right? Even when it was kind of new and not much going on, there was those kind of sprinklings of like greatness. Like you knew that this was going to be something someday, and just the sheer innovation that they've thrown behind it, and effort and resources and time and money to build that product out. And now that it's like, I believe it's a Gartner leader now. I think so. In that space, which is like there were like two or three platforms that basically did this stuff. And then Atlassian came along, and they're eating up market in there. And I've used most of the main tools of the big ones, and the easiest one to use is Jira. It
I
just is
agree.
the easiest one to use. It's the cheapest out of the big boys, and
Which is kind of shocking,
it
surprisingly,
is
somehow the
it
cheapest.
is kind of shocking. I mean, I'm sure maybe one day it might not be, but like
Yeah.
right now it is, and it's easier to use. It's easier to configure. It's easier to maintain.
Hmm.
And now that like FedRAMP is in place and those types of things, like
Yeah.
the sky's kind of the limit at that point. Some of the other ones, I mean, I'm not going to get into a thing, but like some of the other ones are just abysmally, hard to use
Oh
and
yeah.
look like they're a Oracle interface from the early 2000s. And it's just like,
Service
what are
now.
we doing, guys? you're a $100 billion company. What are we doing? Why does it look like this? But yeah, no, I think JSM. And then one thing that I actually will say too, and I think, and this part is actually more important to me, is in terms of revolutionizing. And I don't know if they set out to do it, but I feel that compared to other companies in this industry, that they just blow them out of the water in it, and it's their community.
Oh yeah.
The investment that they've made into their community is, I've never seen anything like it from a company like this.
Hmm.
It's very unique. It's very robust, and Atlassian sinks a lot of money into it, and they care about it. Like, I mean, we've seen that firsthand. We're obviously involved, and we know what it's like, and we know like how the sausage is made, as it were, and it's not BS. Like they really do care, and everybody in the community, like community champions and whatnot, like everybody's like good people. Everyone there just really like wants to help each other. Like
Hmm.
there's no competing, there's no real ego. It's just a really nice place to be, and a great place to get help, and like no one's on their own. Like you're not on an
Yeah.
island. Like everybody's there to help each other. And
Hmm.
I would not be surprised if, and I'm pretty sure, but some of the best innovation has come from like that source. Some of the biggest business cases I've solved were thanks in part to stuff on the community. And yeah, so I think kind of those two things, JSM and then just the community in general, have
Hmm.
been game changers.
Yeah, and you talked about JSM pricing. I did a post where I broke down
Yeah, I saw that.
all the platforms, and
It's
yeah,
crazy.
shockingly, I was going into it. I was like, Jira's gonna be middle of the pack,
Yeah.
typical pricing. Not too expensive. I know there's more expensive, not too cheap.
Mhm.
Turns out across like almost every category, Jira is the cheapest option, except
Yeah.
for like one or two minor categories where on the very lowest level, it's not quite the cheapest. But yeah, shockingly, it's the cheapest. And I know there's like an argument to be made where they have Confluence, they have Jira Service Management, Jira, but so do the other platforms. If you look at Monday, if you look at Freshdesk, Freshservice,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
those kind of have that same structure where they have that one product, they upsell you on the other product. So it's not really anything new. And
Hmm.
maybe Atlassian even kind of pioneered that idea, but it definitely is one of the cheaper options, which is kind of crazy compared to if you take ServiceNow, for example, which is extraordinarily expensive, not only to run and maintain, but to really do anything. If you want to change anything in there, you have to have like a certified ServiceNow administrator to jump in, to work with you, pay them hundreds of thousands of dollars just to pretty much do anything. It is very enterprise level and enterprise
Sure.
heavy, but I've used both, and I don't know. There's not much holding Jira back or Jira
Yeah.
Service Management back from like taking the market share of ServiceNow, and I
Yeah.
think it's just the investment that the companies put into the platform that is kind of holding them there for now. But
Hmm.
obviously, at some point, when they kind of realize that the cost difference and the feature set's just going to be better at some point, they're probably going to jump ship and go to JSM. I would
Hmm.
expect it to happen at some point.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for
And
sure.
I don't even know if like there's a lot of new companies adopting like a ServiceNow platform because it's so hard to break into and like implement Jira. You just kind of stand it up, get your couple agents in there,
Yeah.
easy. It takes maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to ServiceNow, I don't even know where to start with ServiceNow.
Yeah. I mean, you basically have to have like proper developers on staff that are dedicated to
Yeah.
service now. I mean, it's crazy. Um, yeah, I haven't seen a lot of like new. I haven't come across a lot of like new customers where it's like maybe they're new to Atlassian and they're new to ServiceNow. Like I've never seen that. To me, the ServiceNow ones have been like grandfathered in, or they've just had it for a very long time. Um, yeah, and I haven't seen a lot of places that have both,
Mhm.
and I'm seeing less and less of that.
Yeah. I've
Um,
run a few migrations from ServiceNow to Jira. Cost savings was insane and it was
yeah,
more user friendly. Like everybody loved it all around way more. So yeah, I
yeah,
mean, it's just, I think it's a matter of time. And at some point, JSM is going to be the old dog in the fight, and there's going to be a new kid on the block
yeah,
that's kind of taking JSM's thunder. But for now, that's Jira Service Management.
yeah.
I'm also a big fan of like the way that Jira runs their business projects and does kind of what the Asana ClickUps of the
Hmm.
world do.
Hmm.
Those are like they're not revolutionary. They're kind of the same thing that you would find in those other platforms. But the idea that you can do that and have Jira Service Management and have your development team and your documentation Confluence is so awesome in my
Yeah,
mind that like you could have every team member inside of Jira and have no other tool to manage your work. Obviously,
right.
there's like exceptions to that, but I think it's really cool to see your entire team on one platform, managing work in
Hmm.
one place, aligning to your goals, Atlassian goals. That's kind of a newer thing that they're doing.
Yeah,
Documenting everything in Confluence. Loom is pretty great. Maybe they'll make some other really cool acquisitions soon that will play into that. But
sure.
at least for like us internally, that's what we do. We're on the Atlassian stack, and I don't know if I would switch to anything else if I had the choice at this point because it's just so good.
Yeah, the ecosystem is very strong, like between the
Mm-hmm.
tools, and the integration is very powerful, and it's becoming more and more seamless.
Yeah.
Intentionally and uh, literally, like with the recent UI changes and everything, like
Yeah.
you can see where they're going,
Mm-hmm.
and but even then before, I mean, it was always consistent. I would say it was consistent,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's just more in your face in terms of the experience.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it would be. I've tried other tools. There were other things that like I would, because I always want to like kind of keep up on the market, right? So that I would go and try other tools occasionally, and or have done a migration from one tool to the other, so I get pretty
Right.
familiar with it. And yeah, it's just not the same. It's
Yeah.
just there's something about it that just works better.
Mm.
I know I'm biased. I got my Atlassian, right? Like, but like,
True.
I don't feel like I'm completely wrong either. There's a reason why this company is gaining success and becoming even more successful every day.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
I think the only real like revolutionary tool that I've seen in the past maybe few years has been Notion. That's been
Mhm.
like I've
Yeah.
seen like Jira, Confluence take a lot of what Notion does, and almost every tool in the market take what Notion does and kind of implement it in their own way.
Hmm.
Other than that, like Asana's been around, it's been doing the same thing, and it's a
Yeah.
great platform. It's not a bad platform, but they're not doing anything new or extraordinary like Notion is.
Yeah.
ClickUp is kind of doing what Jira is doing, trying to like combine all your work in one place, but it's just not feature rich enough. And I don't know if they could catch up to Atlassian in the way that, Atlassian's been building this for so long.
Hmm.
It'd be really hard for them. And then now they're integrating like the Slack alternative into ClickUp, and it's just too much for them to keep up with. And
Yeah.
if you outgrow that platform, it's very unlikely that they're going to keep coming out with these crazy new big features that help enterprise teams actually utilize their platform. But
Yeah.
yeah, I love Notion, and the only problem and fault I find in it is that it's just a little too open. It's a little too flexible. It's a
Hmm.
little too unstructured, and that's a good thing in its own way, but it's also a bad thing because I like the way that you have your Kanban flow in Jira. In Notion,
Hmm.
it's like a little bit too open. It's a little bit too flexible.
Yeah.
And some people may like that, but I just don't think it scales very well with a larger organization. It's so
Right.
much harder to keep up and clean up and maintain over
Yeah.
time. I don't know if you've ever used Notion, but I used to be a really big fan.
Yeah.
But when like doing any kind of real work management, I just prefer Jira.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely there's like a comfort level there, and it could be,
Hmm.
the personalities that we have or whatever. I don't know, but like you want flexibility, but at the same time, you need a little bit of structure.
Yep.
Like you need the inmates can't be in control of the asylum the entire day, right? Like maybe a couple hours here and there, but yeah, you need some type of process in place, even though process is a
Hmm.
dirty word, whatever.
Right.
But you need, if you want to scale, if you want to get data that matters, if you want to get organization that matters, if you want to get clarity into what the hell everybody's doing, then you're going to have a modicum of structure, and
Hmm.
albeit a flexible structure, like one that you can change as you need to. And I just think that Jira ends up doing that better than a lot of other
Hmm.
companies, that you can have all those pieces that you need, but at the same time you can still make it into what you need it to be.
Yeah. Totally agree. I've been doing a lot of deep dives into like process related things because
Yeah.
everything we do in Jira and Confluence, everything we do is a process. A workflow is a
Hmm.
process. A work item is a process category. Permissions are process guidelines. Like everything is a process. And whenever I work with a company, like I'll take JSM as a really simple example. You don't build a portal that's catered towards engineers or IT support staff. You build a portal that's catered towards the end user that has no idea what tech is, how
Yeah.
to navigate a portal, what terminology is. You don't use words like incident and service request. You use things like, or words like my computer's broken or I can't access this software. And that's what a lot of teams get wrong, especially when you dive into these more specific processes. And one quote that I really like is don't build for the believer, build for the skeptic. Because if the
Yeah.
skeptic will adopt that process, everybody's going to adopt that process.
Yep.
The person who's a believer will make it work. You're going to have your supporters that say, yes, I love Jira, I love this process. But the
Yep.
skeptic, if you never build the platform for the skeptic to adopt it, you're always going to have issues with your entire team adopting whatever new process or system that you've built.
Hmm.
And really, that kind
Absolutely.
of boils down to what I said with IT, and it's making it as simple as possible, making it as frictionless as possible, making it seem like that process almost doesn't exist and like that work kind of just happens. That's really
Hmm.
the whole goal of what you do in any platform, but especially Jira, because there's so many little things that you can, add validators to and conditions and require a bunch of fields. And it kind of gets away from you when you start to look into that and you're like, oh yeah, we want this, 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 and this.
Mm-hmm.
But then you kind of make it so difficult that it's hard for not only end users, but even internal employees to use that setup or process that you've built. And that's like one really scary thing that I've noticed a lot of teams going overboard on. Have you noticed anything like that? Is that something that you come across often?
Like teams going way too much in the other way.
Yeah, like restricting, out of their minds everything that they possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen that at times. Um, I've kind of always been a proponent of like let's start relatively flexible, and
Hmm.
then if the situation arises that we need to have more guidance,
Yeah.
in the process, then we implement that. Like unless there is some kind of security need or compliance need or HR
Hmm.
need or something like that, like locking things down, restricting things, like making it super rigid is just not necessary.
I agree.
Jira can let you be flexible without it becoming or it can let you get the data you need without it becoming a
Hmm.
rigid tool. Like
Yeah.
you can still give your users the flexibility that they are looking for without sacrificing what you need on the back end.
Hmm.
It's just finding that sweet spot.
Yeah,
But
makes
yeah, I,
sense.
I definitely try and keep. I think it depends on the type of team, right? I think when you're
Hmm.
when you're a brand new team starting out, like maybe you have like new development teams that are forming and they've never done agile before, right? And you're going, okay, we're going to start in Jira and we're going to go from here and this and that. I could see maybe having still a very simple workflow, but have it a little bit more prescriptive of like,
Hmm.
okay, from here it goes to here, and from here it goes to there, and then we
Just
can
to
make
kind
sure
of
that this,
train
yeah,
initially.
just to train them to get them used to that. But I think as time goes on, then you put those all transitions in, and then you say, okay,
Yeah.
like let's add in the flexibility. You guys are pros now. You know what you're doing. Um, but I mean, outside of that, unless you have some kind of rigid process that you have to implement, like some kind of approval workflow that has to go, to point one, two, and three in that order, then
Yeah.
outside of that, just keep it flexible.
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of, or like, it's my pet peeve when I jump into a Kanban board and I can't just drag and drop wherever I want. It's
Yeah.
like drives me nuts to have to go one column at a time and add in whatever fields need to be added in. It's an absolute pain for me. So we do everything we can internally to build around like, hey, what can we do to make sure all these statuses are open at the very least? Maybe throw in some validators or whatnot. But we don't want to restrict that workflow because especially on the Kanban view, it looks like it's meant to go anywhere. Like it could go
Mm-hmm.
back, could go forward, could go, from left to right is typically the flow that you want it to go in, but you have that flexibility of kind of just moving things around wherever they need to go. And if
Yeah.
you restrict that, I feel like the Kanban process loses its meaning in a way. You might as well just look at a list view and then go from point A to point
Yeah.
B, and that's your workflow.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, it depends on the team. And as you mentioned, I think it's really great to give the opportunity for a new team to get familiar with the flow,
Mm-hmm.
to adopt it, and then you kind of loosen it, or vice versa. If your team is, maybe very familiar with a process, you give them the flexibility that they need. And then when you notice things that start to get missed, reporting items that you need to have at some point that aren't being filled out, start to add little validators and restrictions whenever you can. But
Mm-hmm.
even then, I'm a big proponent of using, at least automating or doing what you can to avoid that. For
Yeah.
example, if you're requiring an assignee when going into in progress, instead of adding that requirement in, just add an automation that's going to auto assign to the person that transitioned it. That way, transition happens, no validator needed.
Yeah.
Most of the time, 99% of the time, the person who made that transition happen needs to be the assignee. If
Yeah.
not, it could be manually changed.
Yeah.
But that's a lot better than clicking the button, hitting the drop down, and saying, "Oh, you can't transition. Go back. One more
Yeah.
click. One more click. One more click." So it's just a
Yeah.
much bigger pain to enforce all of that, and that's like one little step of the process. Now every other step has like another three validators. that's wasting so much time for the teams to just
Mm-hmm.
making sure that the right fields are filled out to make those transitions happen. You're losing so much time through that process.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm always looking for ways to avoid and not require things and automate things that we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Agreed.
Are you like big on automation in Jira? Is that something you're pretty heavily into?
Yeah, I mean, I once they got, what was it? What was the company that called that they acquired? Co
Code Barrel, right?
Code Barrel. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, once we had where I was at the time, we had already had the app.
Oh,
We had
interesting.
purchased it and we were using it, and it was just like, even back then, it was like, man, this is awesome.
Hmm.
Like and it had so much potential, and it was just like, oh my god, like I can see where this is going, and it's going to be such a help for us. And yeah, I definitely I fell in love with automation for sure.
It kind of boggles my mind that an app developer created that and Atlassian purchased it. Like that's just crazy to me that
Yeah,
Atlassian didn't have something in place, or did they have any alternative for automation at the time?
not that I remember.
Wow, that's
No,
pretty
I mean
crazy.
it was all just like, what can you get from the marketplace, you know?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, it's
which I
very
mean,
different these days.
yeah, like I mean, I respect that they created an ability to have a marketplace and vendors to
Hmm.
say, hey, let's extend the ability of the tools, and we're going to let you do that, and here's our APIs, and like all that stuff that enabled an entire industry within the industry, right?
Yeah.
And Atlassian makes an insane amount of money from the marketplace and from
Right.
vendors and from partners. That's a huge income stream for them. So I mean, I applaud them for doing that. At the same time, it was like, yeah, eventually your product is going to have to evolve too, because there are. I said this to somebody else, but like the apps that I love the most are the ones that you use and you're like, why isn't this just out of the box?
That's true.
Right. And that's a sign of, number one, I think, a sign of a well-made app, because it
Hmm.
feels seamless, and it just like fits within the product very well, and it kind of flows naturally and that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, I think yeah, I really liked automation. I love automation. I love messing with it. Uh, Still to this day, within the last few weeks, I was building some pretty nifty stuff that I had never built before, and doing things in different ways. And it's fun. It's fun to get in there and mess around and do stuff. And then when you get it right and it works, and you get that little
Hmm.
that little jolt of dopamine, and you're
Yeah.
like, man, this is great. But no, I love automation for sure.
In my mind, automation is sort of a blessing and a curse, or not just
Yeah,
automation, but the marketplace in general.
yeah,
It's sort of a blessing and a curse for Atlassian because they don't necessarily have to adopt some of those features that already live in a really great app. Like time
hmm,
tracking is Tempo is a killer feature or a killer product that does all the time tracking stuff. That's not really something Jira or Atlassian need to focus on or worry about. But then
yeah,
it's also a curse because Atlassian is not going to adopt these things natively that might work a lot better natively.
hmm,
Automation is a fantastic example of that.
yeah,
There's a few that I just, these apps that I use that, man, they are just such a pain in my mind. Checklist is probably the biggest pain for me. I do not understand how teams use the checklist plugin. It is so slow. Every time the UI loads, it
hmm,
just you see that little circle spinning, the checklist items come up. You
yeah,
can't automate on them very naturally and easily, at least not until the EAP gets released.
yeah.
Like it's just such a pain to use a checklist, yet so many teams adopt it, and I do not understand why. I would just rather have an extra hierarchy that I add to whatever project I'm working in or in Jira, and then use the subtask as the replacement for the checklist item.
Hmm.
That's
I
in
th-
my mind a better solution. Or even what were the action items that Jira added to their product. Those are fantastic. Those have been in
mhm,
Confluence for a while, but very simple, easy way to kind of add those little checkbox things, sort of like a checklist
yeah,
that you can just natively have in your product and
mhm,
doesn't take any more time to load, doesn't cost anything extra.
yeah.
It was just better overall experience. But yeah, I'm pretty anti checklist app, and That's my soapbox.
Yeah, I mean, every time I've seen teams use it, it's because they feel like creating a subtask is too cumbersome,
Yeah,
and I can see it to an extent, but I'm kind of the same way. I'm like, just create a subtask. Like it's
or an
assignable. You
action
know where
item. I
it's
mean,
at.
if
You
yeah,
understand where the progress is. Like it is to me. It is the right thing to use. Would
mhm.
be a subtask. At the same time, I think Atlassian could just fairly easily roll out a better checklist field that just has
Yeah,
a few
maybe.
more bells and whistles to it. I mean, the one that they have now, it's like, I mean, it's just like a checkbox field, but it is
Mhm.
the most bare bones of bare bones field. Like it is basically useless at this
I
point.
agree. I mean, in
Um,
my mind, if Atlassian does a checklist feature, how would
yeah,
that be any different than a subtask? Like it would be the same thing essentially.
yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, I guess it depends on like what all they put into it, right? I mean, I know a lot of the checklist apps they
It would
have
be a
like
subtask
statuses and yeah. I mean, they basically make it a subtask without making it a
with less
subtask.
features,
Yeah, yeah,
which is kind of
um,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, I love the action items. Those to me are awesome. I wish there was like maybe a status icon or the ability to index them like with JQL. That would be killer. I know that they're
mm,
in a description field, so it's not quite as easy, but the way that Confluence does it, you have your action items all over the place. You assign them, you drop a due date, you have one place to see all of your tasks. It would be absolutely incredible if that same functionality existed in Jira. And then you have all of your tasks in like one view from Confluence,
yeah,
from Jira. Maybe there's other products they could kind of evolve that into, but that would be, I think, awesome in my opinion, and pretty much negate the need for any kind of subtask or checklist feature at all. And maybe that's
yeah,
kind of why they don't do it. But yeah, I would like to see that at some point.
yeah. I mean, maybe I don't know. Maybe subtasks are becoming antiquated. I don't know. Maybe it is something that needs to evolve and just become a
Maybe,
little bit
yeah.
simpler to use. You know, like I mean, I think maybe the idea of having to navigate away right to go I mean
Mhm.
although that's even becoming less now because even if you have subtasks listed in your story or whatever it is you can change the status right from there like you can change the assignee you can do a lot of things
Right.
there right in page which then to me starts to make it become a little bit like a checklist
Mhm.
but yeah I don't know it's
I
interesting.
think you even have the ability to change the summary now. I don't know
Yeah,
if, yeah,
yep,
you do. Okay.
you can.
I don't remember if I saw that in Jira, but I thought I clicked on it and I could edit it and I was
Yep.
like, whoa, this is new. But yeah, basically a checklist at this point with just extra features. But I get the point of like, you click on it, there's too many options and it is a little much for sure.
Yeah,
But the feature set is the same, just more rich and a little bit more complex.
yeah, yeah.
All right, I'll wrap it up with one final question, which is if you could snap your fingers and change absolutely anything in Jira, what would be the number one thing that you would change?
Oh man. um I am a big proponent of the JXL plugin.
Mm,
I don't know if you've ever used it.
I have, yeah.
Yeah. Um, that was made by ex-Atlassians. They left and decided to go make that because it wasn't happening fast enough for them in the normal development process. Um, I think that is an app that Atlassian 100% should just acquire and just roll into the product because so many people over the years have begged for
Mm,
give me that view that is a table that I can manage and I can run formulas on and have my little Excel experience. You know, like so many people want that and need that. Um,
mhm.
and I always hate it when you end up seeing like people that are like taking the data out of Jira, going and throwing it in a
That's the
spreadsheet, and I'm
worst.
just like, I want to have an aneurysm, right? Like it's just it's I hate when that happens, and I've seen
Mhm.
that so many times, right? And it's just like come on, like and I realize they're starting to get there, right? Like the inline
With the
editing is
list
more
view.
robust
Mhm.
now, and you can do conditional formatting a little
Yeah.
bit, and like this and that. So it's like it's starting to get there, but I feel like with the time and money that they're spending on development of that kind of feature set, you'd probably be cheaper to just acquire the plugin from the company.
Probably true.
Um, but hey, that's their choice. But yeah, I mean, when I was at Atlassian before, we had actually had I was working in IT, and we had demo days. We had like vendors come in and basically it was a program to allow vendors to come in and pitch at an enterprise level customer, right? So like small vendors that are trying
Oh,
to
okay.
get out there and whatnot. And JXL was one of the demo days for us. They came in and pitched to us and showed us their product, and everybody like on the meeting was like, "Holy crap! Like we need this. Like we need this installed today." Um, and that was people at Atlassian, right? They were like, "This is amazing," uh, and yeah, I mean, I've always been a big fan of that, and I think just having a more
Mhm.
robust kind of table experience for managing issues
Mhm.
is sorely needed, and I appreciate that they've made progress in that area, but they need to make a lot more.
It's yeah, it's sort of been getting there. That's what I've noticed too. It's you have more flexibility, more functionality. You obviously don't have that formula ability, which I don't know if it'll ever come to Jira natively, but that's why those applications exist and why those companies make money because
Yeah,
people want them. And
yeah.
you know, there's always going to be a market for something better in Jira. And I do appreciate the way that they've allowed that integration between the marketplace partners and their native app to
Hmm.
pretty much be able to do anything. I think a lot more companies should do it. I think it's a very, it's one of the biggest reasons that people use Jira and Atlassian because of that capability of pretty much being able to do anything. Because if there's a market for it, there's probably an app for it.
Yeah.
And use other tools like Notion I was talking about, there's no good plugins that really change the way you use Notion. It's mostly like some third party things that you'd have to use a browser extension for, or some rinky dink way to like add something in. It's just not very native. Whereas with
No.
Jira, yeah, we do have some like slight loading speeds and it's not quite as quick or quite as native, but there are quite a bit of products that make it feel like almost a 100% Jira experience, which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Josh, for being here. I appreciate you taking the time. Where can people find you if they're interested in seeing some of your content that you put out?
LinkedIn is basically where I hang out most. So just my name on LinkedIn, you'll find me.
Josh Costella. All right. Well, everybody
Yeah.
check Josh Costella out on LinkedIn. And thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.